Excited to be here, and I'm excited to meet all of you guys. So today, basically the extra topic we're going to talk about, just pretty quickly because I know we're almost out of time, is branding and social media. So to kind of begin. So today we're going to talk a little bit, just touch on building your brand, creating content for social media, and measuring success. And so just a little bit about me. I'm the marketing manager at BizStarts. I'm passionate about small businesses myself. There's a couple that I'm working on starting as well, so I'm right there with you guys. I'm excited to be here every week and learn along with you. And then before we kind of get into social media, there's a sort of foundation that I want to talk about that I think is important to think about even before making your first post on social media. So just by a show of hands, how many of you guys have social media pages for your business right now? Okay, awesome. So most of you do. So even though most of you have it, I'm going to touch on some more basic topics. However, I would say that your brand on social media is a fluid thing, so it's something that can change over time. So I think it's always important to think about some of these topics, even if you already have those social media pages established. So the foundation that I want to start with is building your brand, which to me is the identity of your business. And so to kind of start, just like a formal definition of what is a brand, branding is the process where a business makes itself known to the public and differentiates itself from others. So we kind of talked about that earlier with the commodity trap, how if you can't differentiate, you fall into that trap. So I think branding is a good strategy to that. So if you look right here, most of the things on here are food brands, food and beverage brands. And even though they're all selling the same sort of product, in your mind, these are all they're very differentiated in your mind, and there's a reason for that. It's their branding, how they look, the way they present themselves, the colors they use, the fonts they use. Those are ingrained in your brain, these big companies. So it's just a good example because they're very well known. Oh, okay, sorry. So I kind of broke this down into 4 different categories. So your brand on social media would be your purpose, your audience, your tone, and your voice. So your purpose, so that's kind of the thing to start with, is why do you actually want to use social media for your business? Is it to grow your sales? Is it to find new customers? If you're a nonprofit, maybe it's outreach for your cause, or maybe gaining funding for your cause as well. And are you looking to inform, entertain, educate? There's so many different options, like the list could go on and on and on. But I think it's really important to kind of hone in on that. No, it's okay. Hone in on that focus.
Here, Patrick wanted you to
okay.
But stay away from this as much as possible.
Okay. So that's basically the beginning part of this, and I think it's important to kind of establish those objectives for yourself because it gives you a clear why. You can keep going back to this first step, and every post you make, every campaign you start, you can think about this purpose that you thought of. And you can have multiple purposes as well. You might not just have one of those things, so it's just always important to keep those in mind. And then the second part of that is your audience. I also want to clarify, I know I'm going over these a little bit fast, but we do have a week on marketing, so we'll get more in depth with these things, but this is just sort of to start to think about these different topics. So with your audience on social media, you want to think about who is it that you're trying to reach. So again, is it customers? Is it investors? Is it your aspirational audience, which is the audience you hope to have within the next few years if you're trying to transition over? And so once you know this, you know who it is that you're talking to on social media, who your brand is trying to reach. So then, an activity that I've done in the past that I found really helpful was actually building a persona for your target audience. I know we've talked today that you don't necessarily have to have one specific person you're targeting. It can be a vast range. But you can start to build out demographics for this person. You can even find a picture of someone that looks like them just so that you always have that person in the back of your mind when you are creating your brand. So how old are they? What demographics do they fall into, whether it's like socioeconomic or where they live? What are their goals? What needs do they have? Or like what pain points do they have? What is their lifestyle like? And another great point to think about is what social medias are they on? This is an example, it's kind of an extreme example, but for example, say you're a law firm, their target audience might be more professional people or older adults, and those people might not necessarily be on something like Snapchat. They could be, but they might not necessarily be, so they might not focus on that one. And then next is your tone. So the way that I try to think about tone in your brand is what feeling do you want to create when someone interacts with your brand? So all of the things that they see, the visuals, from the visuals to just the feeling that you put out with what you're posting. Are you trying to come off as professional, trustworthy, childlike? Maybe you're a daycare and you're trying to come off as playful just to show parents that's how you are in your business. Humorous or maybe edgy, like a stereotypical example would be like a tattoo shop. They might have an edgier tone to their business. And so every time that someone sees you on social media, that is a touch point with a potential customer. So I think it's really important to have that consistent tone across your brand that is a representation of what your business is. And so then there's a few different ways to convey the tone or feel of your brand on social media. So the couple of big ones that I wanted to go over were like the naming process and your logo, as well as consistency, and then also telling your story. So I'm going to get into those. So with naming and logo, the name and your logo are like it's the first impression of your business, and so it's the first thing that people see. That's not going to be like the most important deal breaker for your business, but I think it's really important to secure your social media handles online and your domain so that across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, your website, they all have the same name so that people can find you. And then also when they search you, that makes you more searchable on search engines, so you'll come up more often. And then, yeah, that's basically that. So just trying to keep it consistent. And then this is, so there's this really interesting thing I learned about with color psychology. So in your brand, I think colors really matter. Sorry, oh my gosh, my voice. I'm a very visual person, and so colors give off feelings, and we know that in psychology. And I don't want you to feel bound by these colors or tied down to them, but it's just kind of interesting to see. A good example, I think, is diversity. If you look at like Google, NBC, Windows, eBay, those are kind of like diverse companies in your mind, as well as the blues, which are trust, dependable, and strength. There's a lot of technology companies in there, and when you think about it, that does give off that feeling. So when you're thinking about what colors you want to establish with your brand, just sort of go back to that tone you're trying to create. What is it, and what colors go along with that feeling? So I picked a random name for a company and made 2 different logos for them with different tones. So with this one, I essentially was trying to make it look like, so the tone I was going for was more classy, professional, that sort of feeling, maybe more high-end, if that's the sort of vibe that you're going for in your brand. So the colors are more traditional looking. The text is just has like a fancier curve to it. And then on the one on the left, I was trying to go for a more modern, maybe young professionals visit this bar and restaurant. It's more of a fun place to go, that sort of thing. And that you can see that in the fonts. The fonts are more unique, they're not as traditional, and they even have like an image in there of like a little martini. So it's just to show you that you can have the same name, you can be selling the same thing, but these 2 things give off a very different vibe and a different tone to the brand. And so then just to go off of that as well, I would say, we hear this all the time, but consistency is key. So a really good way to ensure that is something called a brand kit. So this is something, you can find these templates online. A really, really, really good resource for you guys if you don't have like graphic design experience would be canva.com. I love Canva. Like, you can make any logos. They make brand kits for you on there, so you can keep your designs consistent. So like in this one, they have a palette of colors that they stick with in all of the images they post, the videos they post. They'll include that color palette so that it always has the same look. So that when you see those posts, you know it's from that brand, and that brand is identifiable to you. So even if this brand and a different one are selling the same thing, this one will stand out because they have something that's consistent to them and makes them unique. And so then lastly, the last part of it is like your voice on social media. So how will you use your voice? And I think a good way to put it is allow your voice to reflect the tone of the visuals in your brand. So we just talked about the colors and the fonts, that sort of thing, and what tone you were going for. So then it's important to think about how you will speak to your target audience. No matter what type of content you put out, if it is text, if it is images, how will you use your words in those? So are you trying to go for an educational voice, testimonial voice, storytelling voice? You can do all of those. You can have a range of those. And then you have to think about how you want to sound. Do you want to come off as humorous, professional, encouraging, like you're talking to a friend, which would be more casual? So a pretty good example of one, so Wendy's as a brand has sort of reinvented itself with younger people by the way they talk on social media. So Wendy's is Wendy's, and it's like a fast food brand, but they're known for like really sarcastic replies on social media. So someone said, "What should I get from McDonald's?" And they replied, "A refund." So it's something you wouldn't really expect, but they chose a unique sound to their voice, so they stand out. And a lot of people like online know about this. And so I think it's given a new life to Wendy's, honestly, by the way they interact with people on social media. And so now actually like getting into making your first post, this probably seemed like a lot leading up to even that point, but I think it's really important to establish that foundation of who you are as a brand, because then the rest kind of comes easier. Then everything you're creating for social media, you can go back to that brand and make sure that it is following that key that you made for yourself and keeping things consistent. So like we talked a little bit about, there is such a huge range of content. Like the list could seriously go on, but they range from just simple text posts to images, videos, blogs, going live, sharing other people's articles, like Instagram and Facebook stories, and then also like automated messaging, which they have on Facebook now. You can have an automatic message system connected to your page. And so the types of content available is always changing. They're always introducing new features on social media. And so you can play with those new methods to stand out because not everybody uses them when they come out. However, there's still a lot of power in just the basic posts that you can make. And then also another thing that I wanted to touch on was that I think it's really important to keep things visual. For me, when I see, even if there's a simple text post that you're trying to put out, if you go on Canva and put it on top of an image, on top of a color block behind it, that stands out more than just a simple text. Like even if you're just asking a question. And so another really, really big thing that's going on right now in social media marketing has to do with authenticity and transparency of brands. Everybody today is held very, very accountable for the things they do. It's hard. When brands are keeping secrets, people do not like it when they find out about it. And so brands that have developed a persona that is authentic and they use storytelling in their brand, that's really, really important. So as small business owners, you guys have really great stories to tell. You all come from a range of backgrounds. And so that's like the core story to your business, who you are as a business owner, and that can speak volumes to so many people because you're the face, you can be the face behind your own brand, and that makes people trust you more. And so basically what storytelling is in general is focusing on the human side of your work. And so you can think about what range of stories you have to tell about your business that will connect with your audience. It could be stories of customers you have. It could be stories of clients you've worked with, things like that. And so when you think about it, people don't necessarily connect as well to data and statistics as they do to a really good story about somebody. And so as you see, it's kind of ironic because I'm using statistics to like clarify this point, but I just think it's important. So 89% of Americans are likely to switch brands to one associated with a cause, given comparable price and quality, jumping nearly 35% since 1993. So more people are starting to follow brands because they've established a brand and they have a cause behind it, which goes into the storytelling aspect. And a really interesting case study that was done was for Save the Children. They went on a college campus and they gave out donation envelopes to people, and in half of the envelopes, they talked about Save the Children with statistics and data. And in the other half of the envelopes, they showed a picture of a child that is being supported by the cause and talked about their specific story. And the people who were given the envelopes with the picture of the child and their story donated twice the analytics pages in all of those accounts. Google Analytics is really great for your website. Again, it just tracks demographics, the customers that are coming to you, or the clients. Email marketing reports is another great one. If you do email marketing as one of your platforms, they send you the open rates, how many people clicked on things. You can see, literally, they'll have little highlight bubbles of where people clicked on, so you can see what it is that they're interacting with. Okay, so I don't know how much time we have. We might be out of time. 0. Okay, well, that's okay. But I guess if you want to think about it in terms of your own brand, we had an activity that we were going to do, but it's okay. But if you want to think about those 4 bubbles we talked about, I can go back to it too. Your tone, purpose, voice, and audience in terms of your own brand and the colors you want to have, the font schemes you want to have. Keeping those things consistent are super duper important for creating an identity. And I think a really, really great point of this is that all of this is so fluid. It can change. My own brand that I've created, I've changed the logo like 3 times in like 2 years just because it's always, the vibe that I'm trying to give off is changing. And it's probably the same for you guys too. So you don't have to feel trapped by any of these things I've said, but just kind of thinking about how to create a look and a feeling that you're trying to give off in your business. And yeah, that's it.